Let's talk about that new firmware update for the Moza Aircross 2. Last week I put a little first look review out for the gimbal, and although the specs and the features and design are awesome, the footage was kind of meh. Then the day after that they released a new firmware which is meant to optimise the algorithm for the motors, make the motors a little bit stronger and therefore improve the stability. When I made the original video, the firmware was on 0.2, and now this video is going to be about firmware 0.3.5. So I know the big question you're all asking is, did they fix it? Well, yeah, kinda. Oh, and by the way, that comparison with the Ronin SC in the Weeble lab, it's coming. I'm working on it. If it stops raining. No, but I'm really excited to test actually how the Moza Aircross 2 compares to the Ronin SC in the Weeble lab. I haven't actually used the Ronin SC yet, so although I've got a kind of idea how it's going to perform against the Weeble lab, I don't actually know how it's going to perform against the Ronin SC. So I'm really looking forward to sort of getting into filming that video and showing you guys the differences between the three gimbals. All footage in this video is going to be shot with the Sony a7 III, the Tamron 17-28 f2.8 and the Sony 35mm 1.8. Of course, if you're using different cameras, your results are going to vary, and of course depending on your experience. I've owned the Xeon Crane V2, the Crane Plus, the Weeble Lab and now the Moza Aircross 2, and I've been using gimbals for a few years now. So I've now done a couple of professional shoots with the Moza Aircross 2, and you might be thinking, mate, you just did a bad review on that gimbal, why are you taking it to professional shoots? It's a bit risky. But the day it got updated, I took it out for some test shots, and I tried to replicate the shots I did in my first video a little bit and see if they improved the stability. So here's a couple of shots from the first shoot compared with shots from the second shoot, and see if you can notice a little bit of a difference. So as you can see, the firmware update seems to have significantly improved the stability of the shots, and I'm quite impressed by how smooth and how stable the footage is now. So let's take a look at some of the footage I filmed from the weddings over the weekend. Weddings are a little bit different because you're constantly changing lenses, you don't necessarily have time to balance properly, and so it's a good test for a gimbal as to how much it can compensate for that. So overall, I'm seeing a lot of improvements with how stable the footage is on the Moza Aircross 2, and I think these improvements earn it a place in my kit bag. Most of the shots are completely usable without stabilisation. The only shots it still really struggles with are the tilts, but I'll be trying to work out some settings which allow me to get the best out of the tilt here. So overall, they've done really well with this firmware update to eliminate some of those jitters, and I've managed to get some great footage from this gimbal. So moving on from that into the battery lasted me 2 full wedding days with no charge in between. So absolutely no issues with the battery, because normally I'd be charging it between shoots anyway. User experience wise, there's a couple of things that really got to me. Sometimes the pan wouldn't keep up, so when you're turning it left to right, it wouldn't actually center, so you'd have to keep double tapping that trigger button to center the pan again. Another thing is you've got the control stick up here. When you're using it, your thumb kind of hits these buttons down here, which changes all kinds of settings. Gudsen Moza, if you're watching, it'd be really nice to have like a lock feature where maybe if you triple tap the button, it will lock all of these buttons so you can use the stick without having to worry about accidentally pressing the buttons. Other than that though, I really enjoyed using the gimbal on my professional shoots this weekend. Again, this is not a full review, but I just wanted to update people on the condition of this gimbal after the firmware update. And I think the firmware update has really changed the game with this gimbal. When choosing small and lightweight gimbals, you're always having to make a sacrifice. With the Gimbal Lab, for example, it's not very good at balancing those front heavy setups because there's not enough space there to actually balance it, and the motors just generally aren't strong enough. And that's something that really can't be fixed with a firmware update. With the Moza Aircross 2 though, they've pretty much got everything right with the design. There's a lot of space on the top, which means you can balance all kinds of different setups. They've also really improved the quality of the motors with that update, and I hope they continue to improve it as time goes on. To finish off then, I think the firmware update makes the Moza Aircross 2 a good gimbal for most people. After my last video, I would have said don't buy it at all, but now I'd say it actually becomes a viable option, and I'm definitely keeping it. That's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions or opinions on the Moza Aircross 2, then please leave your comment down below. And subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I'm going to be doing a review of the Aircross 2 in a few weeks' time after a lot of rigorous testing. And I'm also going to be doing that comparison between the Gimbal Lab, the Aircross 2 and the Ronin SC. So stick around for that, and I'll see you in the next one.